Hi, and welcome. Hi, and welcome to the inductive argument types. I don't know if it's really a welcome, but I like to say that. So there's basically a few different types of inductive arguments. The key here is that the conclusion will follow likely, but not 100%. There will be more types than what we're going to discuss here, but the key is that the conclusion follows likely rather than necessarily. And so we can start off with like predictions, and predictions are an example where, for example, anything that is predicting the future, no matter how certain, is going to be likely true, not 100% true. Forecasts are just a great example of, I think, where there's usually a lot of certainty about them, but it's not going to be 100%. It's likely, and most of the time it's the case, but, it's never 100%. For example, with the weather, they usually will say it's such and such percent. It's possible it won't snow, it's possible it will, it's possible it won't get quite as cold as they think it will. And so it's a prediction. And so anytime you're predicting anything, no matter how solid your past experience has been, you never know. That if I leave for work at this hour, I'll get there at this time. If I leave 15 minutes early, I'll get there on time. You never know. It's maybe highly likely, but it's not 100%. Statistical reasoning generalizations. The idea here is that anytime you're taking like a sampling, or you're trying to say, well, 80% of the people I talked to 300 people, and 80% said that, they are positive about the future. Therefore, it must be the case that 80% of all people think are positive. That whatever you do, that those are likely true, and you likely have the conclusion, but we would never know 100%. If you have a bag with 100 marbles and 99 of them are red and one is blue, and I reach in and pull one out, it is likely that one will be red, but it's also possible that it won't be. Appeal to qualified authority. Qualified authority is essentially somebody who is an expert, and essentially we use them as a source, and we say, well, this expert said this, and they have knowledge on that. And so we would think that if they're making a prediction, they're making a statement, that they would know. Example might be, various cases, like, your plumber says, I can do that, and that would probably fix the problem, but it's probably going to recur. There's a qualified authority. They've been doing plumbing long enough to know that even though you may fix the problem in this way, it's likely not going to last for more than 6 months or a year. And they might say, this is probably an easy, cheap fix, something we can do, but it's not going to be a permanent fix. Doctors, they might say, well, I would think that this is the best way to handle it, but it's your choice. Okay. Arguments based on signs, symbols, icons, etc. Basically, these are things where there's some sort of sign that says, hey, this is what's going to happen. And it can be as simple as, a sign that says, road ends ahead. Well, it's likely that that is the end of the road, but it's also possible that that sign could be old, that that sign could be wrong, that sign could be a lot of things. And so that could be it. But you can also have, like, signs in the form of, there's sometimes people always tell me, I don't have a sense of smell. But I always have people tell me that, it smells like snow outside, or they'll say that, and I always think, really, there's a smell of snow? I mean, I used to have a sense of smell, but I lost it due to an accident when I was 16. But the case is that I don't ever remember that smell. I mean, sometimes you can kind of get a feeling that it's going to snow, but a smell, I don't know. Maybe. I know I've heard people say that, at least my wife says that, and I don't know. I think I always just, okay. And then analogical reasoning, so that would be a sign or symbol, something that's sort of pointing to it. And that would be, if you get this sign, then it's likely going to happen, okay? My knees or joints are hurting, therefore it's likely going to be. A sign might be I sound a little congested. That's because I am, etc. Analogical reasoning is anytime you do an analogy where you compare two people, two things. For example, you know, so-and-so is a good student, they did well in logic, therefore somebody else who's a good student will likely do well in logic. An example of analogical reasoning that may be probabilistic is I bought a Hyundai about 8 years ago, 9 years ago now, and that thing has been absolutely amazing. I love that car. And I've had I have probably done, other than tires and oil changes and gas, I have spent probably a few $100 on repairs. I've not even changed the brakes. It's got 250,000 miles, and I keep asking them to check them, and they're good. They tell me. Maybe they're trying to kill me. But anyway, the case is that as far as analogical reasoning goes, I might be able to analogize to say, I've had such a good experience with my Hyundai that I would think it would be worth buying another Hyundai. And I probably will next time I buy a car, which will likely be sometime soon because this car is beginning to have some issues. Although it's still pretty reliable. It's still extremely reliable. It's just it's beginning to have some issues, mainly cosmetic and small things like the windows one of the windows came out of its track. But the case is that, that would be a case of an analogical reasoning, whereas because Hyundais, because I've had experience with one Hyundai, I'm able to analogize and think that probably another Hyundai would be a good choice. And I've also heard that from mechanics and stuff who say, I've had a lot of people come in here and they tell me their Hyundais are great, and that's sort of also further along that analogy. There's further strength to it. And finally, I put in there a few more types. I believe in the logic project, I do list a few types like legal reasoning, moral reasoning. I decided I'm not going to go into all those, mainly because I think that to a large degree those wouldn't necessarily shed a ton of light, and I think it may just confuse it. So instead I decided I will just sort of mention there are other types, and essentially the idea here is that the conclusion is probabilistic rather than 100% true.